I first heard about Kena early last year. In the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of staying up late trying to get into the stock drop that Best Buy or Walmart had for the PS5, I started watching trailers for games coming out for the system that I most likely wasn't going to get. Kena was one of those trailers. I thought, okay, this game looks pretty fun. Third-person melee combat with an art style like Pixar. If I had to sum it up in one word, it would be cute. So I'm going to admit something here and now. I am a soon-to-be 32-year-old man without children who unironically enjoys Pixar movies. And if you have a problem with that, well, I hope you find some joy somewhere in your life. No, but my point is that I was predisposed to liking this game. I figured I would enjoy it just based off the trailer, which really only showed a few brief glimpses of gameplay, some cutscenes, an inviting art style, and these cute little, beautifully rendered Pixar balls of fluff, or as I call them, little buddies. Those were my expectations going into the game. Boy, was I in for whatever the good version of a rude awakening is, a very polite awakening, a Canadian awakening, if you will. I spent the vast majority of my time playing Kena with a huge, dumb grin on my face because of how great every single aspect was. This game is so much more than God of War, but Pixar, or Zelda, but Pixar, as I've seen some reviewers imply. Earlier this year, I made a video about how much I loved Ghost of Tsushima. So if you watched that, then you have some sort of baseline for what I consider a nearly perfect game. So here's a hot take. This game is as good or better than Ghost. Now, I know apples and oranges, they're very different, but hear me out. In this video, I'm going to back up exactly why I say that, breaking down the different qualities that I think this game absolutely nails. The visuals and design, the performance, the gameplay, the music, and the story. And of course, I'll mention the few missteps or issues as I see them. I'm also going to totally spoil the ending of this game in the story section because I just have to talk about how good it is. So if you don't like that sort of thing, I'll let you know when we get there, in case you want to go in blind, which I do highly recommend. The very first thing you notice about Kena is just how gorgeous it is, how happy the visual style makes you feel inside. Now, I've already name-dropped Pixar, and yeah, I think that's a pretty good one-word summation of the style. If you enjoy watching Pixar movies, you'll love the way this game looks. In fact, you'd be forgiven for thinking that they produced it. But to say the styles simply look alike is a bit reductive. What I'm poorly trying to convey here is that it isn't just the art that looks like Pixar, not just the modeling, or not just whatever. It's everything from the character animations, both subtle gestures and larger, more action-packed moves. It's the focused expression on Kena's face when she swings her staff. It's the contrast between the bright vigor of the healthy sides of the world, cut harshly by the gloomy, oppressive feel of the corrupted areas. It's the detail and care spent on getting the little buddies to act as fucking cute as humanly possible. They're always following you around, and the group gets visibly larger as you add more to the family. When you're swimming, one of them takes refuge on your head to stay out of the water. Or maybe it's just trying to navigate. Who knows? The rest follow behind lazily, some just floating on their backs as they swim along. When you walk into a house or building, they find little perches to sit and watch. You'll see one pop out of a jar, a few sit in a small group on a table, while another one just is super interested in whatever you're looking at. They all have a sense of personality when you're interacting with them. They even have multiple exclusive gameplay elements that build on top of the visuals, which I will cover later. Besides all that, there isn't a glut of characters in Kena, so each one has to be extra compelling to make the world feel real. They are, and it does. The precise expressiveness in the characters' emotions are just beautiful. Frankly, I don't think it would have been possible for Ember Labs to have put that much detail with a larger cast of characters, so the choice to keep it small and focused clearly paid off, because I cared about each and every one that was introduced. That is some serious efficiency in design. The storytelling plays a role too, obviously, but none of this would have been half as good were the animators not up to the task. Bottom line, Ember Labs sets the gold standard for this visual style in video games. Here, I'm going to start with a complaint. Now, I ended up getting this game for my PC instead of the PS5 because it's more powerful and, why not? So in my playthrough, in the first week-ish after the release, I noticed some lag and some frame drops during some of the more complex animations. Now, I have a pretty beefy 2080 Ti, but it seems like it was just drawing too much from the GPU too quickly, and it just shit its pants for about a fraction of a second. Then everything was fine. It reminds me of playing an emulator on my computer for the first time, while the game is still building out all the shaders. Now, I'm not a game designer, so it could be a total different issue entirely, but that's just my 2 cents. Point is, it didn't look great or feel great when this happened during combat, and it did happen more than a few times. But to be fair and balanced, it wasn't so bad or regular that it made the combat unenjoyable. Not by a long shot. And this may not even be an issue depending on which platform you play the game on. It could have just been due to my setup, or even just a bug that will be fixed with an update. Other than that one thing, and I really can't stress enough that it really was the only bug or glitch I experienced, Kena is polished so goddamn well. With the level of detail on display in this game, in the year of our Lord 2021, I naturally expect games to have just a given number of bugs. Call me jaded, but it's a breath of fresh air when I play a game not plagued with issues. It's part of the reason I enjoyed Ghost of Tsushima so much. Kena's near perfection is odd too, because there were some red flags at release. Just like No Man's Sky and some other titles, reviewers weren't given the review copies of the game, meaning nobody could put out any kind of first look before the release day. Not that I'm a large enough channel to warrant a review copy, but whatever. This is usually a bad sign. It usually means that the developer knows that the game is broken or in some way not ready for release. It's super baffling in the case of Kena, giving everything I've said, and I'm going to say. So yeah, I don't really know why this happened or have really any meaningful commentary on it, but I thought I'd at least note it. In terms of actual performance, this is a next-gen graphics game, so I didn't expect it to run at 120 frames on my last-gen GPU, and it doesn't. However, with ultra settings on nearly everything, I can get a consistent 80 to 90 frames on my 2080 Ti, which is pretty great. There isn't really any micro-stuttering like we saw with the release of Deathloop, or any of the other issues you normally see with PC ports. All in all, I really don't have much to say other than that it's just nearly flawless and it runs great. And to be completely honest, not having a lot to say is probably the best thing when we're talking about performance. This is the area that I was most surprised by. From the trailers and promotional material, I knew the aesthetics of the game would be great, which is why I was excited to get it. But I didn't hype myself much for the gameplay. Man, was I so wrong in so many ways. Let's start with the combat. The developers clearly took inspiration from the Soulsborne style of games. For instance, the melee buttons are on the bumper and trigger, unlike the usual face button combat. The bosses are extremely tough while also being fair in that they provide clear visual tells when attacking, and etc. I wouldn't say this is a Soulsborne clone though. It's no Surge or Jedi Fallen Order. Clearly, there are major differences. To name a few, dying doesn't remove your currency or experience, Kena's attacks are more instantaneous than you'd expect from that genre, and the smaller enemy encounters often aren't quite as deadly as you'd expect in a Soulsborne game. Instead, this feels closer to a Metroidvania crossed with a Soulsborne game, hence why I said it was kind of like a Pixar Hollow Knight. When you start the game, you only have a few abilities. light and heavy melee, block and parry, a dodge, and a double jump. Like a Metroidvania, you gain access to new abilities as you progress in the story, which offer both a benefit to you in terms of combat, while also acting as keys to unlock secret areas. The abilities you obtain really do add a lot of vigor to the combat. They include a spirit energy bow and arrow that your staff sort of transforms into, sticky remote detonated bombs made out of that same energy, and a teleport dash/charge attack. In addition to these, there's a full skill tree which allows you to modify the base abilities to make them more powerful, give you more arrows to fire, bombs to throw, etc. In addition to all that, your little buddies can also come to your aid in combat. At first, they're scared and they hide from the fighting. However, doing damage to enemies increases the level of your courage meter, which, once full, allows you to use little buddy abilities. These include binding your enemies up so you can absolutely lay into them without fear of being hit, turning your staff into a sledgehammer to slam down on your opponent, or supercharging your bow, which overpenetrates the target and hits multiple enemies. You can get up to 4 charges of this meter at a time by the end of the game. Besides all that, the little buddies are Kana's only means of healing yourself. Rather than a potion flask like you'd have in a Soulsborne game, Ember Labs has an interesting solution to managing the player's healing without making things too easy. See, one of the biggest problems with the Souls series is that they can, at points, become trivially easy towards the end because you can collect so many healing charges that bosses can be beat in the first try, since you can just heal after any mistake. So instead of this system, Kana gives you a very finite amount of healing per each major encounter, and passively heals you outside of combat. When you enter a combat arena, there will be 2 to 3 blue flowers on the edges, and once you fill up a courage meter, you can send your little buddies flying over to one of the flowers, which instantly heals you. This also uses up a single courage meter charge, which adds in another layer of decision, forcing you to choose between healing or a special powerful attack. Presumably, this method allowed the developers to precisely tune each encounter with the knowledge of exactly how much healing power the player would have at any given point. It also gives the player a set, predictable difficulty. It really is a fantastic choice, even just for the narrative implications of Kana using the little buddies not only for destruction, but for healing too. It also ties into their true name, in a way. More on that later. My only issue with the combat is that Kana only starts with a light and heavy attack, and it isn't until like an hour or so into the game that you get your first big ability. In that time, you're ostensibly supposed to be learning the basic rhythm of combat, but it can start to feel a little stale. Luckily, everything else is distracting enough and the base combat engaging enough that it isn't egregious. On to the bosses. Wow. I was not expecting Dark Souls level bosses in this game and am still shocked by how well done they were. I don't make that comparison lightly either. I hopped on the Souls bandwagon pretty late, but immediately became enamored with those games, along with the genre they spawned, and I'll definitely be playing Elden Ring day one. I spent 2 days trying to beat the Nameless King, yet somehow beat Dark Eater Midir in like 3 tries in Dark Souls 3, so trust me when I tell you that the Kana bosses are very difficult, at least on the game's higher difficulty options. Go figure. Now, maybe they're not Nameless King level difficult, but with a cosmetic makeover, they probably wouldn't be out of place in like a Dark Souls 4. Like any good Souls game boss, though, none of them are unfair because of 2 key characteristics: consistency and predictability. Each of the main bosses in Kana is unique, and they have clear tells when attacking, which gives you a very small but consistent window of time to either dodge or block. All in all, I thoroughly enjoyed every single one of these bosses, especially the final one, which I won't spoil until later, but damn, story and gameplay perfectly melded. Combat isn't everything though. Kana has some pretty great lock and key mechanisms that enable you to solve some light puzzles when exploring. None of them are very difficult, but they allow for some unique uses of your abilities outside of combat, which I enjoyed. Granted, I'm not in the camp that the puzzle mechanics in these types of games really need to be more difficult to give a good experience. I've seen some of my favorite game analysis channels shit on Breath of the Wild for this, which honestly I don't agree with. So, take my opinion with a grain of salt or whatever. For an example of one of these puzzles, you might have to throw an energy bomb on a pile of rubble, which sort of reverse explodes it back into its original unbroken form. From there, you have to platform up, then jump and use your bow and arrow mid-air to shoot a blue sparkly flower, which turns your arrow into a sort of retractable grappling hook, pulling you up to the next platform. It may not be super challenging, but that also allows for quick thinking and fluid movement from puzzle to puzzle, making you feel like this Tomb Raider spiritual badass. In some sections, Kena has no way to progress by herself. At these points, the little buddies come into play once again. If Kena can't reach a ledge with a double jump alone, she can send the buddies to join together and find a big block to lift, moving it to wherever she needs, and giving her the extra height to make the jump. Other times, she'll reveal a special bloom called a forest tear, which the little buddies can sort of possess and use it to clear out the corruption which plagues the region and blocks her path. Finally, in your downtime, you can find chests that reward you with this sort of diamond-like currency, as well as fruit bushes that Kena can rustle to feed the little buddies. The former is used for cosmetics, and the latter gives you skill tree points. This is all totally fine, and I have absolutely no complaints with the fruit bushes. Hell, even watching the little buddies just gobble it up is enjoyable. My only complaint is that I wish there were more items to spend the currency on. As of now, you can basically only buy hats for the little buddies, which, let's be clear, the fact that you can put a little cowboy hat on this little buddy is objectively, hands down, the best thing ever in any game. It's over. Everybody give up. Ember Labs won gaming. Having said that, by the end of the game, if you, like me, want a variety of hats on your buddies and don't just buy all the most expensive hats for every single one of them, well, then you wind up with a glut of currency and nothing really to spend it on. I get that this is sort of just asking Ember Labs to develop more stuff, which isn't particularly fair, but it would have been cool to ask for some skins for Kena or her weapons, or just anything else to spend the currency on. It would force into the game another meaningful decision when the player is spending that currency. In the grand scheme, it's not a huge issue, but I'd have been remiss if I didn't bring it up, since it was something I was thinking about a lot during my playthroughs. So the big takeaway from this section is, Ember Labs not only made a deep gameplay system for Kena, they also found extremely fun and creative ways to incorporate the little buddies, who play an important role in the story. By the end, all of the battles and puzzles you tackled together gives you a real sense of companionship, which makes the story that much more impactful. The only other games I can think of that did this type of companionship gameplay as well as Kena would be maybe Titanfall 2 and The Last of Us. In particular, your relationships with BT and Ellie, respectively. And after thinking about it, that has to be one of the biggest compliments I could give this game. My main complaint overall for Kena is I just wish it were longer. Not because the game was overly short. In fact, for this type of single-player game, I thought the length was decent. It took me about 13 to 14 hours to complete. So no, it wasn't short. I just wanted to play more Kena. I feel like the last couple of years have been sort of a golden age for sound design in music and video games. Actually, Destiny has been the pinnacle of the industry in that regard for like the last 8 years, but we've also been spoiled recently with the likes of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, Ghost of Tsushima, Control, and so many others. Kena fits right in with the best of those in terms of its relatively small score and its overall sound design. Immediately upon entering into the game, you're dropped into this cavern filled with traveling souls and are greeted with this ethereal, otherworldly sound, the track entitled Beneath Worlds. It has this loose, intangible feel that instantly sets you right in the cavern alongside Kena and the spirits. Also, as you'll find out, all of the instruments for every track are similar, even though each one has its own special feel, which is a good way to tie all the music and the narrative together. So right after you exit the cavern, in the first 10 minutes of the game, you enter a forest area, and you're greeted by two playing children. The music switches tack to match their playful feel. This track, called Befriending Spirits, might be my favorite of the entire game. It matches the childlike wonder with an adventurous quality that wouldn't be out of place in a Zelda game. And when the choral parts come in, whew, it just gets tingles all up and down my body. Saplings is one of the few battle tracks that you'll bang your head to as you tear apart the many enemies Kena faces. I found myself doing exactly that every time it played in both of my playthroughs. The hand drums, along with what I believe are pan flutes, correct me if I'm wrong, create this richly energetic sound that just begs for action. One of the coolest things I discovered while playing the game is how the developers adapt the music for different environments or situations. I'd recommend Noodle's really informative video on adaptive music as a primer if you haven't already seen it. But in short, what it comes down to is that developers have two choices when mixing their music. Either fade between tracks as the player crosses some threshold in the game, or do some horizontal mixing, where different versions of the track play in different situations and have a sort of segue piece that bridges the two. Of those, Kena does seem to use the easier fade approach, except in a couple different situations it does something that I haven't seen any other game do. I don't know, maybe I just haven't been paying attention. Ember Lab seems to have coded some filters to run the tracks through when you enter certain situations. For example, entering caves causes the music to be passed through some reverb and other sound effects, which make it sound far away, like it's actually echoing down some cave system. The effect this has is subtle, but it makes it feel like the music is diegetic. That is, it's actually playing within the world, somewhere outside the cave, and you're just hearing it filter in. It's as if some musician is serenading Kena as she traverses the world. And it's not just the cave systems. A similar effect happens when you enter the corrupted parts of the world. I don't know, those are the two I found. If you find more, leave a comment below. It's a really creative way to make the player feel like they're actually in the world with Kena. The voice acting is absolutely on point too. Kena is great, as are all the spirits she encounters in her journey.
This land can be healed, but you cannot stay here, Spirit. You must move on.
You are the one who does not belong.
Hell, they even got two pretty good child actors that delivered some believable, and more importantly, cute lines that match up perfectly with the facial animations.
Look, Saya, she cleared away the poison. The little guys can eat it. They love it.
My name's Kena. What are you two doing out here, alone in the forest?
Beyond all that, it's the little details that really round out Kena's sound. The wooden click when she's uncovering a new little buddy is just wholesome. The attack sounds are all really unique and lend a weight to the combat. The little buddies themselves and their tiny grunts and growls just make you want to gather them all up in one giant bear hug and never let go. If all that seems good to you, then you will not be disappointed with the way Kena sounds. Just make sure to wear headphones. Trust me. This is where the spoilers begin. If you haven't played this game yet, I don't understand why you're still listening to me speak this sentence. I mean, I know it's turning into a long run-on sentence with semicolons and shit, but you could have already clicked away by now and purchased the game to play for yourself, and then come back later to watch this part and become a patron because you so enjoy my content. But oh well, I guess you just want to have the ending of this generation-defining game spoiled for you, which is fine, I guess. Just don't say I didn't warn you. Whew. Okay, we good? Everybody gone that doesn't want to be here? Okay, good. Now, I'm not going to go beat through the entire story because that would be dull. Instead, I'm going to touch on some of the broader themes and important characters and the roles they all play in the narrative. I think that will still leave some room for you to experience it yourself if you didn't take my earlier advice. Ultimately, Kena is a game about overcoming grief. It's a game about having the worst possible pile of shit that life can muster just dumped right on your head, and then getting up, wiping said shit out of your eyes, and giving life the middle finger. But, you know, like in a fun, family-friendly sort of way. It's just such a great theme to tackle for this game because, as a spirit guide, Kena's job is to help people confront these events and the emotions tied to them, all to help bridge their path to the next life. At the same time, though, it's about her own journey, trying to do the same things for herself, and the spirits in their turn helping her. At the very beginning of the game, there is this brief blurb on screen explaining the general gist of what a spirit guide does. However, it provides no insight on who Kena actually is, where she is, or even why she is there, why she's there. These are the things we uncover slowly through gameplay and bits of dialogue pieced together through some of the cutscenes. In the first few minutes, we encounter the main villain of the game, twice. Again, not much is known about him, except for one very important line. Kena says that he, the spirit, cannot stay in this land because his presence is corrupting the forest and its inhabitants. The spirit, named Toshi, responds,
I will never abandon my people.
This one line breaks the whole conflict wide open. What at first appeared to be a simple villain glut with power, in one line is transformed into a tragically misguided leader trying to protect something he already lost. Early on, we meet some other characters. Benny and Seiya are two small, precocious children who lost their brother and need help to find him. The younger, Seiya, is the more adventurous of the two, engaging with Kena, while the more cautious, older Benny holds back. You find them when you first enter the forest, running around trying to catch a little buddy. Oh yeah, and the little buddies. Their actual name is the Rot, and these cute little blobs of fur you see are not their true form. While playing through the forest area, you'll encounter a forest tier. Directing the Rot towards this tier causes them to coalesce into a larger, unified whole. It's remarked that this is their unified true form. While at first it isn't really clear what this comrade Rot is supposed to be, it's later revealed that they are the Rot God, the guardian spirit of the mountain shrine and the surrounding lands. Now, Rot is a sort of misunderstood term. It's an interesting choice for a name and one that I think fits well these little guys. Rot is often seen in a negative light, associated with death and decay. However, while that is true, it also signals the coming of new life, of rebirth. In the same way, the Rot God, the true form of these little buddies, was seen by Toshi, the main antagonist, as an enemy standing in the way of him protecting his people, when in actuality, the Rot God protected the land and its people. The exact details of all this I'll leave for you to discover in the game. After fighting her way through the forest, meeting a mentor character, and collecting relics of Benny and Seiya's brother, Taro, Kena is able to summon his spirit. Unfortunately, all is not well for Taro. In a truly horrifying scene, we see him stumble towards Kena, clearly frightened, when suddenly, and very surprisingly, roots explode from the ground, wrapping themselves around Taro, trapping him and transforming him into a terrifyingly huge monster. This is the first main boss of Kena, and boy is it a doozy.
No, Taro!
Kena is forced to fight in this metaphorical but also very real battle for Taro's soul. When she is victorious, Taro is finally free and able to relate his heartbreaking story, which again I'll leave for you to hear yourselves. after which Benny, Seiya, and Taro are all three sent on their way to the other side. There is another spirit that Kena helps in a similar way, the village woodsmith Adira. Her love, the equal parts beautiful and powerful Hana, was also lost, and Adira needs you to find her. This is some great LGBT representation, and you know I'm down for more representation, especially when it's handled so deftly as it is here, and not in a ham-fisted way like some other children's Disney properties. Setting that aside, though, it's just a well-written love story, and the rest of that part I'm again going to leave for your discovery. Just know that I thoroughly enjoyed it. Around this time, or perhaps before, you'll begin to notice something strange. There are no living people besides Kena in this village or in the surrounding region. A question begins to form. What happened to everybody? As soon as you emerge from the forest in the beginning of the game, you enter a village, entirely corrupted by whatever power is affecting those areas in the forest we saw. It is foreboding, a lost place, abandoned by its people. Throughout the game, more and more of the corruption is cleared away, revealing this beautiful, detailed village that was clearly lived in and cared for. The question remains, where is everyone, and why did they leave their homes? This question is at the heart of the entire game, and its answer is the loss that the final spirit, Toshi, needs your help confronting, even if he doesn't want it. Alright, last chance. Major spoilers for the very end of the game ahead. In your final confrontation with Toshi, it's revealed that he knows about the Rot. He has encountered them before and is aware of their true power. At the end of the fight, he takes them from you and runs off. When you finally catch up, what you find is the Rot God, the little buddy's true form, except twisted, corrupted by the very power you've been fighting the entire game. I cannot stress enough how great this final fight is from every perspective. The epic scale, the story and theme, the combat, the story and theme, the puzzles, the music, and the story and theme. The entire game, you've been slowly gaining these little awesome companions that help you with everything from traversal to combat to clearing out this awful corruption spreading across the land. During that time, you gain a connection to the Rot, giving them hats, assigning personalities, taking a moment to just sit and let them dance or give you a kiss. By the end, they really feel like they're your friend, your ally. Like I said, it's not too dissimilar from the bonds that you gain with Ellie and BT in The Last of Us and Titanfall 2. Bold claim, I know. Granted, they don't have dialogue or a deep story, but the other elements are all there. So when I crested that final hill and saw them waiting to fight me, I was genuinely shocked and angered. How could anyone take something so innocent and pervert it like that? I don't think I can really explain the true depth of that feeling for what in actuality amounts to just some pixels on a screen. But damn it, Ember Labs, you got me. You got me good. And finally besting them, freeing them from Toshi's influence was just as cathartic as you could hope for a finale to be. You might be wondering, what about Kena's story? What is her narrative? Well, in the same way as this review, Kena's story in the game kind of takes a back seat to all the other characters' stories. It makes sense. She is a spirit guide tasked with helping others in their personal journeys. But Kena definitely does have one. As the game progresses, we find out that Kena's father passed when she was a child, so she's working through her own grief, as well as trying to become a spirit guide on her own, without her father to guide her. Her only want in the story is to make it to the sacred mountain shrine that her father spoke of to make him proud, and I think by the end of the game she is successful in that hope. In no small part thanks to the spirit friends she made along the way. All in all, the narrative of Kena is expertly crafted from start to finish, from back to front. Everything fits into place with consistent themes, wonderfully written characters, and some interesting surprises to boot. A fucking plus. I have this habit of getting overexcited about things and telling all my friends about the next cool game or show or book series. And I think they're all pretty annoyed at me because of how often I do it. And to be honest, I can't really blame them. I do it a lot. Actually, that's kind of why I started this YouTube channel in the first place. Originally, I was just hosting a few videos to show my friends this or that game, in order to persuade them to try it with me. So when I say that this is my new favorite game, you can be sure that I'm not just overhyping it for YouTube or something. Granted, it's also true that I may feel this way again in the future about a new game. But for now, I honestly 100% think that this is my new go-to, that it's the best game of 2021 so far. It's like my comfort food, like a warm bowl of chicken noodle soup when you're stuck at home with a cold. If I'm ever feeling down now, I'm just going to hop on my computer and play Kena. Like watching a Studio Ghibli film, it's just impossible for me not to smile while playing it. And even after everything else I've said in this video, all the awesome characters, all the designs, and the music, and the gameplay, I think really that's what matters the most. Thank you to everyone for being so patient for this video to come out. I had a lot of fun making it, mainly just because I got to spend a lot of time playing and thinking about Kena. I also want to give a very special thank you to David Ems for becoming my latest patron. Thank you so much, David, and I really like your name. By supporting the channel, you get a bunch of different benefits, but you also allow me to spend time making high-quality long-form content videos like the ones you just watched. So thank you very much for your consideration. Until next time.